My name is Nat Rovell, and today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about the evolution of product strategy, optimizing product development through strategic reconnaissance. So, as you guys may have heard, product strategy teams are becoming increasingly popular, yet most would struggle to describe the role that a product strategist actually plays. So today my presentation is going to walk you through what the structure of a product strategy team typically looks like, how we partner with other teams, and what the scope is of a product strategy team. So just a quick introduction, a little bit about me. I'm a senior product strategist at Indeed.com. I've been there about 3 years now. Graduated from UT Austin with a degree in finance, hook 'em horns. Then I went up to New York City. I worked in investment banking for 2 years, so worked in finance. And it's kind of interesting because I had this career pivot where I actually ended up working on the first ever product strategy team at Indeed. So how did that happen? Well, actually I was browsing our competitor website, LinkedIn, and somebody had posted a job description where they were looking for somebody with modeling skills. And having been an investment banker, I certainly fit the mold, so I applied and ended up on the first ever product strategy team at Indeed.com. So I'll talk to you a little bit about why those modeling skills are so important and kind of the role that product strategy plays at Indeed. So what even is product strategy? And how does product strategy work with other teams? So my personal definition for a product strategy team is that we optimize the product development process to achieve company-wide goals with maximum efficiency. And who does product strategy typically work with? Well, at Indeed, the product strategy team works really closely with product management. We also work really closely with functional teams. So that's everyone from sales, marketing, and many other teams like CS. And we actually have a data analytics team embedded within our team, and that they help us really understand the data that Indeed has available and make sure that we have the data that we need to drive key decisions. So, is product strategy actually more product, or is it more strategy? I get this question a lot when I tell people that I'm a product strategist. They say, so is that like corporate strategy, or are you like a PM? Like, what does that really mean? And so here I've kind of outlined where I think product strategy really fits well within an organization. So I'm going to use the New York Times as an example because I actually think that they drove a fantastic effort at their own digital transformation. So up at the top, you can see there's company mission, right? And everyone who is in this audience probably knows what your company mission is. It's really high level. At the New York Times, their mission is that they seek the truth and to help people understand the world. If you go on their website, this is what they will tell you their mission is. Then there's the company strategy. And for the last decade or so at the New York Times, that company strategy has been to pivot from a regional news media network to become a global digital media destination. And then I'm going to jump ahead because there's product strategy, or product management, which pretty much everyone is familiar with, right? So at the New York Times, one of their product management initiatives was to build a games and cooking subdomains to capture new subscribers. I'm sure all of you are familiar. New York Times is really successful. They have a fantastic cooking platform. It's one of my personal favorite destinations. And then kind of like the middle bridge tends to be missing at a lot of companies, and that's where product strategy really fits in. So the product strategy is what needs to be true to execute on the company mission. And it's this middle layer. And for the New York Times, that was identifying that they needed to grow a digital consumer subscriptions business. And then last but not least, of course, there's product commercialization. So how do you actually launch a product after it's built? So for the New York Times, that might be something like launching a marketing campaign. And they are out there trying to showcase the New York Times library of crossword puzzles. So that's just kind of a rough idea of the structure of where product strategy really fits in. And I don't want you to look at this slide and think that product strategy thinks that we sit above product management or that we think we're driving the company mission, because that's really not the case. Really, we're just trying to bridge the gap between that high-level mission, we seek the truth and to help people understand the world, and kind of the execution of the actual product development process. So what does product strategy look like in action? So I've put together a fun little case study for you guys today. Let's imagine that we are working for a company called LeafLog. And at LeafLog, we are building inventory management software for plant nurseries. I personally love houseplants, so I thought I would put this together and walk you guys through how I would think about product strategy for a company like LeafLog. So let's say we have a product manager. Her name is Lily, and she's come up with a list of 15 tests that she wants to run next quarter. However, the team recently lost one of its software engineers, and Lily really needs to prioritize which of those 15 tests she wants to proceed with in order to have the greatest impact on LeafLog's business. So there's a couple of things that Lily probably should start thinking about, right? These are really basic. Customer impact, revenue impact, and resource requirements. From a customer impact perspective, how will her planned tests impact LeafLog's customers? Will it drive new customer signups? Will it increase existing customer spend? Will it improve customer retention? From a revenue impact perspective, how will Lily's planned tests impact revenue? So while she's rolling out these tests, will revenue increase? Will we potentially see a decrease? And then even after rollout, what will be the full extended impact of her tests on revenue? And then finally, there's resource requirements, which Lily is intricately familiar with, having run her product management team, and that is how much time and effort will each test actually take to execute from the team. However, Lily's mental map starts to look really crazy. She's a product person, she's full of ideas. And so you can see here she starts brainstorming, and right away, in blue, she's come up with 4 really exciting tests for LeafLog. The first one being she wants to test a feature that enables customers to subscribe and save on soil. The next one is she's thinking about testing a feature that helps the nursery track the weather. She's also thinking maybe they want a compliance feature to help them manage their state licensing process. Or she's thinking, maybe plant growth really matters to our clients who are trying to track inventory management for their plant nursery. And then, her mind starts to expand. She has a lot of follow-up questions that you see here in orange that really just expand upon all of these questions she needs to address when starting to think about planning her tests. So some examples are, what weather metrics do nurseries regularly track? How much do nurseries even care about plant growth? How do nurseries even track plant growth today? Is plant growth something that a nursery cares about in terms of inventory management? There's so many questions that Lily really starts to think about, and her mind is starting to explode. So that's really where product strategy comes in, because even though Lily has all of these great ideas, she has just too many questions and not enough time to get her answers. In fact, even with all of the questions she has about setting up her tests and structuring those tests, she's not even really able to begin thinking about the customer impact, revenue impact, or resource requirements of those tests. So on top of all of that, everything that's in her mind, she's also been extremely busy working on rolling out a pest management feature for LeafLog's clients. So she has her day job as a PM of rolling out this current test for pest management. And she simply will not have the time to really sit down and think about which tests are the best suited to drive LeafLog forward. And so that's kind of where product strategy comes in. So think of product strategy as a built-in reconnaissance team. Product strategy essentially can go forward, go ahead of the mission, and really try to bring back answers about the roadmap that needs to happen ahead. So when you think of the word reconnaissance, you typically think of the process of collecting information on one's enemy. But that's really not what we're trying to do here today. With product strategy, we're not collecting information on LeafLog's competitor enemies so much, but rather on the barriers and the environment that our customers face. So it's LeafLog and our customers versus their problems. And so a good product strategy team will come in and they will start forging ahead, collecting answers to Lily's questions on her potential roadmap that she's going to plan. In the military, there's 3 types of reconnaissance. There's terrain-oriented reconnaissance, force-oriented reconnaissance, and civilian-oriented reconnaissance. And so I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of a taste of what product strategy might work on to help collect some of these answers for Lily. So the first one, terrain-oriented reconnaissance. What barriers does the customer currently face? An example here is product strategy can go and work with UX 1 quarter out to speak with 20 nursery clients to really collect the details about how weather impacts their business and how that impacts their inventory management process. From a force-oriented reconnaissance perspective, product strategy can go work with corporate development to understand who the main competitors are that potentially even offer nursery compliance software, and understand how those competitors have fared through a global pandemic like COVID-19. And so what product strategy is going to be really helpful with here is understanding, for example, if there's a competitor that is already out in the market that has launched a feature like nursery compliance software, how successful has that competitor been? Have they seen a lot of new customer attraction from that feature? And therefore, is it something that LeafLog needs to prioritize in order to keep up to date with the market? And then finally, from a civilian-oriented reconnaissance perspective, product strategy can actually start building models that are assumption-driven to estimate how many plant nurseries would even have something like enough soil sales to consider offering a soil subscription service to their customers. So even though there's a lot of assumptions based into product forward modeling, it is a great exercise to have somebody on your team, like a product strategist, that can begin to understand how large the impact will be of your planned roadmap tests. So after a few weeks of work, product strategy is able to collect all of this great data. They're able to work with a ton of different functional areas and really size the opportunity of each test. In fact, product strategy is able to put together a chart similar to this and actually hand this off to Lily. Lily is ultimately the stakeholder here, right? So what she'll receive is an understanding of all of her planned product tests and what their impact is expected to be on customers, what the impact is expected to be from a revenue opportunity perspective, and then finally, Lily can add in that resource requirements piece, right? Because that is her day job. She's working with the engineers, and she knows best how long each product feature test might take to build. So after broader discussions with the team, Lily is able to lock in her roadmap with confidence. You can see here that some stakeholders have started commenting on her plans. In orange, this stakeholder is saying, I didn't even realize that soil sales made up a small percentage of our nursery customers' revenue. Maybe at the organization, there was an assumption that soil sales were really important to plant nurseries, but product strategy was kind of able to invalidate that hypothesis, and now it's going to drive leaf log in a better direction going forward. You can also see another stakeholder saying, based on product strategy's survey data, I think this feature should be prioritized. So again, it's not about product strategy deciding which 15 tests to go do, but rather understanding the trade-offs of choosing specific tests one over the other and how that stacks up to the company's long-term mission and vision. So in this example, before product strategy on the left, this is what it would have looked like. Lily, in her very overwhelmed state, chose to test 6 features where only one test actually impacted revenue in a meaningful way. Only 4 of the 6 features she chose directly aligned with the company's strategy. There were probably 2 that maybe tangentially aligned, but they weren't really stacking up to the company's overall mission. And then lastly, of the 6 features chosen for testing, her team was really only able to test 4 because of unforeseen dependencies on other functional areas. An example here is when Lily was thinking about testing that state licensing compliance feature, she didn't realize that legal from LeafLog was going to have to be really involved in that process. And so she kind of overlooked that. And when she went out to test that feature, she didn't really have the connections within the legal team to make that work happen. After product strategy, there's kind of a shift and a change. So she was actually able to feel a lot more confident in picking out her final roadmap plan. She ultimately ran 3 tests, and those resulted in major revenue wins because, again, product strategy was able to kind of pre-validate that each of those tests was going to drive revenue in a meaningful way. And then all of Lily's chosen tests aligned neatly to LeafLog's strategic objectives, and her team felt like they had a clear understanding of their mission. And then finally, Lily was able to avoid running into a major barrier because product strategy had actually already partnered with legal when they were running that sizing analysis in the product roadmap prioritization process. And so when Lily came time to test that compliance feature, she was able to connect the dots because product strategy had already worked with legal directly to understand the implications. So I know that's just like the case study, and I'm sure you guys are much more curious about my lived experience on the product strategy team at Indeed. It really is a unique team. So here's just kind of some takeaways from my own time on the team. So before product strategy existed, product management had very little insight into revenue and how product tests were impacting financial performance. OKRs were really kind of set at the individual team level. There wasn't a lot of collaboration on setting those OKRs. Product roadmaps were designed in isolation, and then there wasn't a lot of input being collected from other functional areas that actually need to go out and execute on that product commercialization piece. After product strategy, I think we've seen an enormous change. First off, financial impact is factored into roadmap prioritization where it can be estimated. I mean, that's the whole point of financial modeling. It's just kind of a best guess. It doesn't need to be 100% perfect, but just running that exercise can be really pivotal to a business. Next, OKRs are aligned to broader company goals. Product strategy at Indeed plays a really important role in the annual planning process. So we help PMs think through OKRs. We help them think about the trade-offs of choosing one OKR versus another. And then we also think about how all of those OKRs need to come together to ladder up to that top-line company strategy. And then finally, roadmaps are created in partnership with other functional areas now, which is super exciting. So we work directly with sales, marketing, CS, and many other teams at Indeed, and there's a much broader culture of collaboration between the product team and other arms around Indeed. So that's all I have for today. I'm happy to open it up for questions. I'm here to help. I know product strategy is kind of this new role that's starting to exist in tech. You can also find me, I'm on LinkedIn, or you can shoot me an email, inrovell@indeed.com. And now we'll open it up for questions. Ooh, tough question already. Okay, one person on strategy and another on execution is not ideal. Companies have product managers who work on strategy and execution. Yes, this is true. I hear this all the time. I actually hear this from product managers within Indeed and externally from Indeed. They tell me, why do I need a product strategy team? Why do you think you can come in and help me with strategy? Again, it is not about me driving which tests or test ideas need to happen or are the best. It is more about me partnering with that product person. While they are busy in their day job, there is a lot of groundwork and reconnaissance that needs to happen in order to select the best tests that will have the best outcome. So really, my job is just to partner and help them drive the strategy. They still have the broader vision for the product. I am just one partner and one kind of tool that they can use. Next question, is there a good ratio between number of strategists and PMs? This is a good question. I think at Indeed, we tend to have a pretty small product team relative to maybe other companies of our size. I think that right now we have about 30 product strategists, and I would say there's probably about 70 to 80 different product teams around Indeed. So typically like one product strategist per PM team seems to be kind of what works and what is most ideal. How does strategy relate to product ops? So at Indeed, the way that we think about product ops is probably a little bit closer to that executional piece. So once the product is built, product ops is the team that will go out and actually collect feedback on how customers are experiencing the product that was built and delivered to them. Whereas strategy is a little bit more before that process happens. We don't really focus as much on the actual experience after the fact, although as the product gets developed, there's obviously more questions that will appear based on how the product was delivered. So that's probably where product strategy does get a little bit involved. But for the most part, product ops is after and product strategy is before. Another question, common prior career paths and backgrounds to get into product strategy. This is a good question. I think there's a lot of folks on our team that came from a background of consulting. Also, investment banking seems to be really popular because, again, I do spend a lot of my day job modeling. So I literally will sit there and pull data on, customer X spent this much, and they're going to be in this test group, and we think that they're going to increase their spend 10%, and therefore that's going to drive this outcome. So it is a pretty, modeling-heavy role. Next question, is a strategist or PM dichotomy the same as a PM PO, product owner? I would say it's slightly different. The way that I tend to think about a PM and PO dichotomy is that maybe like the PM is working directly focused on which feature sets need to be developed. The product owner is kind of setting the tone or the cadence of how that's going to happen. The strategist, again, is a tool. We're like an executional tool. We have a bunch of different things that we can do. We can run surveys, we can run UX data, we can talk with corp dev, we can have partnerships discussions. I mean, think of us as like a mini chief of staff maybe to the PM, and maybe that's a good comparison. What is our relationship with UX? Well, we have a very close relationship with UX. I know a lot of PMs are used to working with UX directly, but I want to make the point that like product strategy doesn't really work for every company, but for a company at a certain size and scale, it makes a lot of sense. I think a mid-market company and above absolutely should have a product strategy team, because at some point when you are scaling a company, there are simply too many product teams that are operating in isolation, and there's simply no way to really connect the dots. And as PMs get busier and busier when a company scales, the product strategy team can do a really great job of making that scaling process much more efficient. And then, is that, latest question. I guess I can, how much more time do we have?
You're good, you got 10 minutes.
Oh, okay, awesome. I blew through my presentation then. Cool. Is it common for the product manager, or sorry, they're skipping around. Wow, there's a lot of questions. Okay, what is your relationship with customer success? Also, I think it's a pretty strong relationship. Product strategy regularly tracks things like NPS. So we'll have different conversations about, we saw that this customer is writing in, with this feedback. How often is that feedback occurring? So like, is this a complaint that we're hearing frequently? If so, is this something that we need to prioritize when there's all these other tests we want to run? Do we need to go back, take a step back, and fix something in our product experience to make sure that we can continue on forward? I think I've answered the majority of them, so we can wrap up a little bit early unless there's any other questions I can just take from the audience. There's one in the back.
So I think so the product strategy, what you're talking about, is probably very much on the test cases and solution. Is the broader product strategy still sits with the product manager at Indeed, or is it the same role?
So it kind of depends on the team. So at Indeed, we have an SMB business focused on small and medium clients, and then we have an enterprise business focused on the larger clients that are advertising their jobs on Indeed. And so there's two product strategy teams, and I think that they work a little bit differently. On the enterprise side, I think that the product strategy teams are a lot more embedded within the PM teams themselves. On the SMB side, I think the product strategy teams can work a little bit more fluidly, so we can work across multiple PMs, especially if there's an initiative that maybe one PM's scope doesn't fit neatly under. Maybe they need to build a specific data set or something that's going to drive potential understanding of how our clients work. But maybe that isn't a neat fit under one PM today. So you can work with multiple PMs to make sure that that gets achieved. So it kind of depends, and I don't really think that there's a best answer for that. I think it depends on your org structure. Any other questions from the audience?
Got one there at the bottom. I don't know if you've answered that one or not.
Awesome. Do product strategists work only on internal building and testing or products, or do they always look externally at inorganic opportunities? It's both, which is really awesome. So obviously, at a company of a certain size and scale, you have a corporate development team and a partnerships team, and they are doing a lot of the work looking at inorganic opportunities. But what's great is product strategy can figure out that build versus buy decision. So they can sit with the PMs and literally calculate out how much time a specific feature set will take to build, and then work with corp dev and figure out how much would it take to go out and buy or acquire that feature set, and then really do kind of a cost comparison between the two. So I know I've talked about a lot of things that product strategy teams can do, and that's kind of why I think the consulting background really suits this type of role, because there's just so many different work streams that a product strategy team can really lead. And it's really, it should really be PM driven. So whatever would help the PM make the best decision for their team. Favorite testing tools. So I would say that as a product strategist, I don't work day to day on testing. So I am not sitting there reviewing tests. That's really the PM's holy grail. So I don't know if I have an answer for that. I would say from a UX perspective, I'm a huge fan of offline A/B tests. So OAT testing I think is really exciting and cool. The ability to build some wireframes and essentially show that to folks, and then just get some feedback before wasting a PM's quarter or 2 quarters building out that feature set. What are some ways to align product strategies across products within a company? This is a pretty big question. I would say, I think that you have to connect the dots between that company strategy piece and then the actual product management decisions that are being made. And there's oftentimes, at again, a certain scale and size of a company where those two pieces just aren't connecting. There's a PM, they've been given a really narrow scope. There's a bunch of other PMs that are working alongside them, but they're all working on different things. And it's really hard as a PM in that role to understand how your piece needs to be working with the other arms in order to make sure that what's being built makes the most sense for the strategy. So that's where product strategy is able to come in with a slightly higher level view and say, we have 3 PMs working on this, we have 4 PMs working on this. Is that the right balance? Or do we need to kind of rebalance what we're working on to drive forward the company's goals? So that would be my answer to that. And hopefully I answered the question. Are there any other questions from the audience? If not, thank you so much for your time, and thank you to the Product Led Summit for having me.
Thanks, Nat.